Of all the movies I had to pick for Halloween, oh jeez. You know, there are a lot of movies I could have picked. There are a lot of B movies. There's a lot of indie horror films. There's a lot of horrible movies. There's a lot of good Halloween movies. But of all the ones I had to pick this train wreck of a movie. And now I'm going to tell you about it. I'd like to introduce you to the Human Centipede. Now, the story is about two American girls who are on a road trip through Europe. While in Germany, they decide to go to a club and get lost along the way. Their car breaks down in the middle of this empty road in the middle of the night, and they search around for help. They find the house of Dr. Hyder, who is a renowned surgeon who specializes in separating Siamese twins. However, Dr. Hyder's genius drives him mad to a point where he decides to create a new being of conjoined human beings, thus turning them into a human centipede. He captures the girls as well as a foreign Japanese tourist and begins his planned experiment. And the funny thing is, when you look at the box, and even see in the trailer, they highlight that this is 100% medically accurate. What the hell? Now, if you want to talk about this movie and grade it or rate it as a film, it's garbage. But that's because we're comparing it to so many different films from different genres. Anything from Nightmare on Elm Street, both the original and the remake, all the way up to movies like Gone with the Wind, Slumdog Millionaire, or even indie films such as Paranormal Activity, which technically is considered an indie film, or even something like The Room. Anyway, so not much to say there. It's garbage. However, if you were to look at it in its genre of horror and slasher and gore, that's where it gets interesting when we talk about this film. And even in that category, it's still kind of garbage. Now, in order to examine this as a horror film, you need to understand what the character of the film is. Now, a lot of people have described it and compared it to Hostel and Saw, and saying this is the goriest, the most disgusting, the most gory film ever. But first of all, there is a film that's a lot worse than that I've seen, and I'm never going to review it, ever. But when you look at the movie Human Centipede and watch through it, there's barely any gore. People make a big deal over nothing. Really, the only thing that's disgusting about it is the fact that a mad scientist created the human centipede, and what are the things that help the human centipede live, which is, as we saw in a lot of the clips and as you see in the trailers, it's ass to mouth. So I'll leave you with that already. I've already discussed it right there, and that's practically the disgusting part of the whole film. Other than that, it's just a mad scientist film. And I will go so far as to say I'm going to compare this to Frankenstein. Now, I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for this, but hear me out. The reason why I compare this to Frankenstein is both movies have a very well-respected scientist. In Frankenstein, it's Dr. Frankenstein. In this one, it's Dr. Hyder. They're known for their scientific achievements and such. And what ends up happening is their genius drives them mad because they're yearning for something more bizarre, and they decide to create a monster. Now, in Frankenstein, in Mary Shelley Frankenstein's case, the monster is being created is made out of parts from dead bodies. Now, think about that for a minute. That's really disgusting as it is. However, in our desensitized society, that's really nothing anymore. But that was what Frankenstein's monster was made out of. Parts from dead bodies. Now, of course, the Boris Karloff Frankenstein was scary, but wasn't as disgusting or gory as Mary Shelley really wanted it to be, but that was Hollywood for you back then. Now, In Human Centipede, it's the same thing. Dr. Hyder wants to create his own creature, his own monster. And this is made by putting 3 humans together and creating a human centipede and having it live as one conjoined unit. They must walk together, they must live together, they must not be separated from each other. If one dies, you've already affected the centipede unit itself. Now, let's talk about it as a horror film now that I've brought out the fact that it's more of a mad scientist film similar to Frankenstein. Why does this movie suck? Well, let me explain. First of all, let's take the beginning. You start off the movie like normal B movies and horror films where you introduce some random characters and introduce them to the horrors that are awaiting the main characters. Problem is here, we are given the main characters right from the get-go and we hit the ground running. There's no development, no real build-up as to who these characters and why we care about them. And there we go. The other thing that is problematic with this is a lot of people compare this to torture porn, blah blah blah, similar to stuff like Hellraiser or Hostel. But here's my issue if that's what they were trying to go for with this film. There's barely any. There's barely any gore. There's barely any nudity. There's barely anything other than verbal berating of some of the characters by the doctor and just demeaning stuff. There's barely anything there. Another thing that I wanted to bring up is what is scary about it? Really, there's nothing scary about the story at all. Now, I will admit the doctor is kind of intimidating. When you meet him for the first time, he's one of those people that you probably don't want to meet in a dark alley. But other than that, he's not one of those menacing types that you would be afraid of. As a matter of fact, spoiler alert, if you actually do want to watch this movie, the police show up, and they don't seem intimidated by the doctor, the insane doctor. The doctor is just a crazy guy. Now, the acting by the actor who played the doctor was actually pretty good. He made the doctor seem very unstable, the kind of person who would have lost his sanity. But other than that, there's not much anything to be scary about. I mean, heck, the human centipede looks ridiculous enough as it is. Another thing is, what kind of movie is this supposed to be? It's not gory. It's not really scary. There's no jump out scary parts. There's barely anything. Last part, the acting. You know what? I'm actually going to say the acting is meh. Why? Because it's not like B movies and indie horror films are known for their great majestic acting. I mean, like I said, the doctor was the best one here. And he did look like he'd be somebody that you wouldn't want to mess with, but other than that, there's barely anything in here. It's just typical cookie cutter style characters, cookie cutter style acting in these kind of movies. And after hearing all those bullet points, and the fact that you probably have never even heard of this film, or might have heard of it in passing, it goes to show you it didn't even reach the popularity or the notoriety that movies like Saw and Hostel and even Paranormal Activity did, which is good. That means we're done. They made a shocking film, which, in my opinion, wasn't even that shocking at all, but if people are already grossed out by the trailer, they're not going to be able to handle the movie. And with that, we can rest assured that everything is done, and for most people, the human centipede is the most disgusting and horrifying film they've ever seen. Now, there is another film I have seen that is worse than that, but I'm not going to get into it. I'm not going to ever review it, ever. And I won't have to ever review a movie like Human Centipede ever again. Ooh, what's this? New movie to review suggestion? What? Oh, you've got to be kidding me.